it's always an awkward situation when a woman is in despair and she's, thinking that the promise to her is the time has run out on that, right? She thinks she's too old to conceive and bear children. She thinks she's missed her window. Her biological clock is keeping her up at night, pounding inside of her head. And here comes, she has the maidservant with her, and this actually was a thing back in those days, was that they would be like, all right, well, you can have more children by taking on a second wife. Now, even though this is not instructed in Torah, it's not said you can't do it, basically. So this is another situation where Abraham didn't want to choose multiple women to marry. He just married Sarah and he was happy. Apparently she was a hottie.
What would you say to somebody that looked
But
at that and said, that sounds like adultery? I thought we were commanded to not cheat on our spouses, have sexual relations with somebody else.
because the wife allowed this.
Okay.
So by custom, it's not prohibited. There's no law against this in the Torah about taking on a multiple wives. In fact, there is a law for there is a clause, I should say, within the Torah that says why you could take on a second wife if your brother's widow had not conceived and you want to carry on that family line for your brother. So there's actually a legitimate community reason why the father would allow for multiple wives to one man. Obviously, we have in Deuteronomy 17 Yahweh telling the kings of Israel not to have more than one wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we see most of the righteous men in Scripture do not have more than one wife unless they were tricked, like Jacob, or with this situation, he's listening to his wife because she's giving into the fear that the father's promises are not going to come true. So it's not adultery because his wife is fully aware of it, and it says, she gave Hagar to him to be his wife, not just to have a one night fling with.
Got it.
So therefore, he now has two wives.
Yeah.
So this is why we're going to see later when he has to put her away, that it weighs on him so much. And that Jubilees chapter 17, talks about how this was one of the tests that Abraham went through, was that it was difficult for him to put away his son, his only son at the time, and this maidservant who had become his wife. So it was tough for him to do. And that's why the angel has to show up and say to Abraham, no, it's okay. Let her go. Listen to your wife's counsel in this regard. Because you're going to have another son. You're going to have Isaac, so there, this becomes an emotional issue for both Abraham and Sarai. And of course, Hagar obviously being this whole concept. But I just think that's interesting that, you can have two wives. I would never encourage that. We here at Kingdom of Context don't encourage that. But there is a clause, I should say, in the Torah that is acceptable under certain reasons. And in this case, it seems like Sarah is in fear, and Abraham gives in to her request, thinking that they're going to have the child of promise through Hagar. So
it does appear that every time it's done the right way and in righteousness, that there are extenuating circumstances, from what I can tell.
Yes.
And yeah, y'all have done several milk and meat live streams on this kind of subject and topic. I'd recommend anybody go check those out too. Polygamy and whatnot.
Yeah. I do love the father's grace and like this, just his love towards Hagar, where even though she feels put out and she feels mistreated, I mean, she's pregnant at the time. You know how, that's a big toll on a woman's body. They have lots of strange emotions go through them when they're pregnant that are not normal, because of the fluctuation and all kinds of chemicals happening in their body as their body's growing another human inside them. Yeah. So while she's pregnant, Sarah treats her harshly and she runs away. But the angel comes up and tells to Hagar, no, go back to Sarah and Abraham and submit to their authority. I think that's powerful.
It doesn't appear that Sarai treated her harshly, like just for no reason, because doesn't it say, you have there in the summary, it says that Hagar started to despise Sarai. So she had a bad reaction to her disposition. That's with her.
Well, it was like culturally, it was like a point of shame if a woman couldn't have a child, and the other women would look down upon those women who couldn't conceive. And so they didn't know if it was Abraham that was sterile or if it was Sarah that had the problem until Hagar gets pregnant, right? And then she realized, oh, it must be Sarah. Sarah's the one who can't conceive. So then culturally, it's a temptation for Hagar to look at Sarah and go, yeah, you're not a woman. you're and
I'm
that's
the new
horrible.
wife.
That was a horrible
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because now she definitely has an inheritance promised to her through this great wealth of Abraham. She definitely is in on that will and the alimony.
Yeah.
And the provision that would go with her being a wife to this great man who's very wealthy and very prominent and people respect him, as well as now having his child. So like this is like classic TV daytime drama stuff with soap
It really
operas.
is. Just goes to show it's
You know
not
what I mean? This
without
scenario.
troubles and tribulation to take on this kind of responsibility and expand your family in this way. More wives, more problems in this regard.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want multiple wives, guys. Just stick to one. That's what we encourage you. The Father created Adam and Eve, and that was good. That's what he called good, right? He didn't create Adam a bunch of wives, just one wife. So in this messed up circumstance, now you have Ishmael in the mix, and the Father still promising Ishmael, look, I'm going to make a great thing. Guys, if y'all are interested, go check out the book of Jubilees. It actually shows you in chapter 21 and 22. Ishmael was coming back for Shavuot and for different feast days, for Sukkot, to celebrate with Abraham. He did have a relationship with Abraham. Abraham taught Ishmael righteousness. It says that Ishmael walked in righteousness and taught his descendants righteousness, which is the ways of Yahweh. So unfortunately, Genesis doesn't give us the rest of the story. Jubilees does. Hagar and Ishmael are taken care of by the Father. Let the angel showing up to Hagar to encourage her in this moment be a indication to you that the Father cares greatly about them. And Hagar, or at least Ishmael, did practice the ways of Yahweh as he was taught them by Abraham throughout his life. How did he had weekend visits? Did he come visit every month? I don't know the details on that, but as a grown man, it says that Ishmael was coming back and celebrating feasts with Abraham and doing righteousness. So he is there is solidarity there, and he comes with Isaac. So he has a relationship with Isaac too. So just be encouraged, guys.
I like that Hagar called Yahweh Elroy. That's a
Right.
name you don't hear very
funny?
often, right? But it means the God who sees me. Right? Elroy Jetson is the only Elroy that I know of.
Wasn't there Roy D. Mercer? That's not Elroy. That's just Roy D. Mercer. How big a boy are you? Anyway, you may not know that joke. People in the audience know that joke. My wife knows it. She's probably laughing.
Sounds familiar.
So anyway, yeah, you have to go check out this comedian Roy D. Mercer. He does prank calls on people, tries to fight people over the phone. It's funny. So yeah, Elroy apparently means the God who sees me. That's pretty interesting. If you ever want to name your kid Elroy, but I won't be doing that.
I like it.